Hey, 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 testing, testing. Ooh, I love it, baby. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, my baby. Hey, 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 welcome back to Trek on the Tube, and welcome back to yet another Star Trek review. This time we are talking about a new show, a modern show, Star Trek Prodigy, more specifically Season 1, Episode 4, Dreamcatcher. As usual, first my thoughts and opinions on the episode, then we talk a little about what Toddler thought before moving on to the Easter eggs and references segment. There aren't that many this time around, and as usual, this video will have plenty of spoilers. Hopefully this time around, by the way, everything should be good, the quality, the framing, fingers crossed. Hot damn, was this a good episode. Whoa. Now, I think it's been pretty clear up until this point that I wasn't completely sold on the show, and part of the reason for that wasn't as much each individual episode being somewhat weak in my opinion, it was more about me not being able to see the true potential that the show had. Like, with this particular character lineup, the generic overarching story, and somewhat clumsy writing, or, rather execution of it at times, I couldn't see how this thing could really work. All that paired up with a somewhat nonchalant engagement from the actual child in the house, it wasn't promising. And yet, here we are, talking about an episode that proved me wrong on pretty much every level. The characters and writing were both very well handled this time around. Most of the crew got a few scenes each that created additional depth and intrigue about them and their stories. The whole introduction / explanation scene with the phases and tricorders was delicately delivered. Yes, it was both a Star Trek lore exposition dump as well as basically an encyclopedia entry, but it made sense within the context of the show. It didn't take too long, it introduced new designs, and it managed to squeeze in some humor. And then finally, that very generic feeling overarching plot, well, it actually started to grow on me. And I'd even say it's getting more and more Prodigy specific as it goes along, with this intrigue about the ship's existence and the bad guy's sense of ownership for it, etc. Then, in addition to all of these successful and noticeable improvements, came way better pacing, a very interesting sci-fi concept, and a completely unpredictable ending. Not for a second did I believe they would actually be stranded on the planet, and the whole idea of having one great big living organism feed on unsuspecting visitors was, so great. I'd actually argue that it wasn't just the idea that was brilliant, it was also the way it was used. It set up some groundwork for Dahl's backstory, showcased Rock's innocence and solitude, and something else noteworthy was that it was an easy threat to understand. It's alien, it's scary, but kids will get it. Honestly, this new-ish concept was a perfect fit for the show, demonstrating just how alien, how bizarre, how different, alien worlds can be, how space can be, without necessarily being so complex that it goes completely over their heads. A few last things I'd like to point out are that even if the ship or Hollow Janeway came to the conclusion the planet was harmless, I'm not sure sending cadets unsupervised on an alien world is the best course of action. Dahl immediately reacting to Janeway threatening to call Starfleet and basically tell on him was a great touch. It really reinforced the idea that these characters are kids, and even if it's only on a subconscious level, they do crave some sort of authority and parental figure. From a visual standpoint, every landscape, every planet shot was just fantastic. I mean, the art direction is outstanding. Again, much like the previous episodes, the quality of the animation sometimes kind of lets down the vision. Like in this crash sequence with the whole forest, I don't know, it looked like one of those levels from one of those old Star Wars games. But overall, there really isn't that much to complain about. And I mean, just come on, these visuals here, that compensates for everything. Look at that, that's fantastic. My final thoughts would be that Dreamcatcher was the very first episode to truly showcase the potential the show has. It felt a very original series, and yet it was subtly adapted for younger audiences without being dumbed down. The reason why I'm using those words specifically is because I've seen that complaint online recently. People have been complaining that Prodigy is dumbing down Star Trek for kids, in order to keep the children engaged, which I honestly, I can see that as a valid and a genuine complaint, or like a worry that someone can have. They don't want Star Trek to be too dumbed down, but it's really not something that I would apply to this episode, especially not this episode. Oh, and big shout out to the composers and musicians because the music on this show is clearly the MVP. Like, I won't say the episodes would be bad without it, absolutely not, but I will say that the score is doing a lot of the heavy lifting and elevating the show to a higher level. As for Toddler on the Tube, what I've got to say this time around is pretty short, but it is pretty positive. She sat through the whole thing, captivated by the events and the story, before then actually saying the phrase, and I quote, "I liked it," when the episode ended. So yeah, clearly they found the magic formula for this one. Alright, Easter eggs and references. At one point, Zero drops a fascinating, which is probably a reference to Spock, especially considering, in my mind, Zero is the Data / the Seven / the Spock of this show. I don't know what you guys think. This thingy-majig rolling around this ship kind of reminded me of the .7s, although visually it's taking a lot from the exocomps that we saw in The Next Generation. The whole idea of vines and the planet itself engulfing and swallowing up the ship kind of reminded me of what happened in Discovery recently with the crystals on the crystal planet taking over that ship. And then also, I don't know if this actually counts as references and Easter eggs, but, you know, Janeway mentions Starfleet, and we talk about phases and tricorders. All of these things are classic elements of Star Trek, and they are featured, or at least mentioned, in every show. There we go. That's it. Sweet and simple, not too much to say. Look, it was a great episode. It gives me faith and confidence in what the show can deliver next. I really just hope they tweak that animation just a little bit in future seasons, considering this has already been greenlit for a season 2, although you probably are aware. Like, subscribe, comment, share the video, do all of those fantastic things. Tell me what you think, yet again, about the quality of this footage. Is it good? I think it's good this time. Okay, I think I got it. Big thanks to the channel patrons, as usual. You're all fantastic. Thank you so much for helping. You are the ones that make these improvements possible. And as usual, live long and prosper.